Sports Radio 610 presents Payne and Pendergast.
All right, here was Ian Rapoport on the Pat McAfee show on the Texans and what they're going to do with the second pick in the draft.
I do feel like some of this is media-driven. There's all these rumors that the Texans are going to take a position player at 2. So then everyone's like, well, C.J. Stroud's falling. There's no more visits. Basically, teams are just setting the board. There's nothing to talk about. We've talked before about the C.J. Stroud rumors. I will believe they'll pass on a quarterback when I see it.
You have maintained that take, by the way, since all of it. Have maintained your stance. Okay. We'll see. We'll see if they don't take quarterback.
Right. We will see.
Is that punditry or source?
It's the problem with the draft is it's all a mix because no one has come out and tell me, yes, we are taking a quarterback, nor will they tell anyone.
Yeah.
Ian Rapoport, the only honest reporter.
There is. I mean, I feel like a lot of the reporters are being kind of open and honest about it because they'll say, like, I just keep hearing all this chatter. But, like, in doing that, you also have to concede, okay, so this really is perhaps nothing more than, like, the same teacher lunchroom stuff. You know, like, it's high school stuff. It's somebody's opinion that somebody else recites, and then somebody else takes that opinion, and they all end up hearing the same thing, but because they hear it from multiple sources, which is, like, honestly, it's what they did with the Astros in the buzzer theory with Altuve.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's people saying, like, well, I've heard it from multiple people. Like, yeah, that's the way rumors work.
Right.
Like people tell, there's one thing that's a lie. Other people hear it. It's juicy. So they retell it. And
just because you hear it from multiple people doesn't mean it's true.
Is that just a rumor? Is that just a rampant rumor? No, it's not a rampant rumor. I just heard it from a lot of people, so I know. Like, oh, that sounds a lot like a rampant rumor.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The only thing that's annoying me right now is all of the people chiding the Texans in advance for not taking a quarterback that they know for sure 100% of teams would all for sure take in the second. Like, part of me, I feel bad for C.J. Stroud because I feel like he's being mudslung a little bit, but there's part of me that wants him and every other quarterback to fall down to like 12, just so I can hear people say like, oh, okay, I guess I have to. Maybe the Texans weren't complete idiots for not taking a quarterback at number 2 overall.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the chances are of that. Of all of them sliding, I think the chances are very minimal. I think there's a chance that a couple of them could slide further than we think. The whole thing about 4 of them being gone by the 5th pick, I think, is folly. It's interesting because the thing Ian Rapoport, I thought, implied there more than anything, and it was almost like he was sort of admitting that the industry he's in is kind of fueled by this. He's like, there's nothing to talk about. It's almost like he's saying that boredom is what's fueling a lot of this right now. We're in that dead period where the top 30 visits to the stadium are all done. The draft is until Thursday. There's plenty of quarterbacks that are worth talking about that are interesting to people, where if you say anything about them, it's going to pick up clicks and it's going to pick up ears and eyes and things like that.
Yeah.
Bruce Feldman has a piece on The Athletic where he talks about NFL draft dinging.
Yeah.
And he said, Levis, he talks to anonymous people and they're like, it happened with Levis a month ago where he's getting dinged. And now it's Stroud who's getting dinged, meaning like basically like now we're just trying to pick these guys apart.
Right. But I guess some of it, because I tried to think that with Stroud, like, okay, how much is this dinging versus the McGinn article that he comes out with all these anonymous quotes from scouts and executives and everything. He does that every year, and he just happened to be the first guy to disclose any type of those S2 cognition scores, other than Bryce Young, who was intentionally leaked, likely because it was really, really good.
Yeah.
That was the first guy to leak any of that, but I don't think he's doing that unless there's an agent or a team that wants C.J. Stroud to fall. I don't know. I don't know about that. The other, I guess, the issue I have with people just blindly and openly saying, well, you have to take a quarterback because you need a quarterback. Like, are those people universally applauding the Jets for taking Sam Darnold number 2 overall and Zach Wilson number 2 overall?
Yeah.
Like, I assume they are, because you got to take a quarterback, right? You just have to. You have to.
I thought
you got to take Sam Darnold,
dude.
You got to take Zach Wilson.
We haven't talked about Aaron Rodgers yet, going to the Jets, but to your point, Texans Bill had a genius tweet yesterday after Rodgers gets traded to the Jets. Texans Bill tweets, Texans got to draft a QB at 2 now this year so they can trade for Rodgers next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to take a quarterback at 2. It's Zach Wilson. 2 years later, forking over draft capital for Aaron Rodgers, which isn't a horrible place to be.
Yeah.
But it's a temporary solution.
Well, and it's just frustrating, and I'm not just like complaining about national media or anything. It's just a lot of the arguments that I'm seeing from people that I respect are like two people arguing about the completely different things.
Yeah.
It's like, and honestly, it's like a lot of some political debates where both sides are arguing about their argument is like two separate matters altogether about one topic.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where it feels like you're either arguing that you have to take a quarterback, I guess assuming that you just really like one of these quarterbacks.
Right.
But the other argument is like, no, you don't have to take one of these quarterbacks, especially if you don't like any of these quarterbacks.
Well, especially at 2 if you don't like any of these quarterbacks.
Right. And I do think that there's very good reason to be skeptical of all 4 of these quarterbacks. All 4 of them. I think this is a weird year in the draft where I think that there are enough, about 5 quarterbacks really with Hendon Hooker, that a lot of people look at them and say, yeah, I could see it working out.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I'm not completely and totally in love with him. But you've got a lot of those types of guys versus sometimes there's a couple, 1 or 2 strong guys at the top and then a few other guys that, okay, I'm not sure, but let's take a chance. This year, it's like, I feel like it's a higher caliber of mediocrity. And with Bryce Young, it's just a complete wild card.
Yeah.
Because he's so tiny.
He is. Yep. Total outlier. Here's one more from Ian Rapoport saying nobody knows what the Texans are doing right now.
I think we all can assume at this point that there's a pretty good chance Bryce Young goes number 1, which if that is the case, then the Texans could literally just announce their pick and here's who we're taking in number 2. What's the difference? No one's going to jump them. They're obviously going to make it, and they've gone the opposite route. No one has any idea what the Houston Texans are going to do. Literally no one except for Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans, which has led to rumors all over the place from could the Texans not take a quarterback? Could they just take the top position player, whether Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson? If it's not C.J. Stroud, is it another quarterback? Nobody knows. And this really, to me, is the biggest pivot point we've seen in years for the draft. Because if the Texans do, Tom, take a quarterback, then it's like, okay, the Cardinals will have a chance to auction off their pick, but I'd say more likely make the selection. If the Texans pass on a quarterback, then there's a good chance the Cardinals are able to trade their pick, and then everything goes bonkers from there.
Okay, Rapoport just touched on something at the end talking about trades, which sort of contradicts what he was saying a little bit earlier in that cut.
Right.
Which is, I think when he said the Texans should just announce who they're taking, I think what he meant was they could basically tell media members who it is.
Except that you don't, unless Dave Tepper himself has told you that he's taking Bryce Young. I think you have to keep that option open.
I think even if the Carolina Panthers put up a billboard of Bryce Young over their stadium, you have to consider the fact that trading the number 2 pick is an option. You still have to sit there and play poker if you're thinking of trading the pick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and again, because they might maybe they like one of these quarterbacks enough to take number 2 overall, but they're not completely in love with them.
Yeah.
So then everything has a price.
Yep.
It's just not. It's not a simple oh yeah, we desperately need a quarterback, so we're going to draft this quarterback that we're kind of meh on, and we won't accept any trade offers. No amount of trades will allow us to trade away from a quarterback we're not all that hot from.
Boy, I bet it's interesting in the building over there right now. Rapoport just said it. This is the biggest crossroads at the top of a draft in a long, long time.
I hope it's fun for them in the building right now, and that I hope that they're looking at a lot of the rumors. This is why part of me in wanting them to take somebody that nobody has really rumored them to take isn't just because it would be fun to watch the people be exposed as frauds, but it would also be it would be a good sign for the Texans organization, that they kept it quiet. With the 49ers.
Yeah.
The 49ers, it just got to be a loud wail about how the 49ers were definitely taking Mac Jones, and nobody from the 49ers, and Kyle Shanahan kind of he wasn't even gloating. He's just he was still incredulous afterwards. He was just kind of it was, the way Kyle Shanahan talks, I was just kind of
yes.
weird to see the way everything operates,
Yep.
I just never said anything to anybody. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. It would be a good indicator if they got it locked down over there, if something out of the blue happons.
I don't want it to be so out of the blue. That
no. I want it to be a good pick, but
Chester Pitts or Goodell goes up there Gerald Ford. What the hell? No,
Mike Trout.
Yeah.
Here was Kyle Brandt. Kyle Brandt of Good Morning Football, and I think if you listen to Kyle Brandt's, I guess this sounds like advice for the Texans. It does. This is a pretty good indicator of where the Texans have kind of put themselves on the media landscape when it comes to the benefit of the doubt, I guess. Here is Kyle Brandt of Good Morning Football imploring that the Texans go a certain way.
He's not short. He's not skinny. He doesn't have
Stroud
small hands.
Here,
he's not unliked by his teammates. He's not unintelligent. There's no red flags. But you sit here and you're like, yeah, but that Levis and Richard, like, what are you doing? Just take the great player who has done it across the board in every category you could want to. Just make the pick. Just don't outthink it too much.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like if the draft was held like a week after the Super Bowl, I feel like the picks might be better. You sit there and you're like, but I think we can maybe do this and out-genius.
Isn't just make the pick settling, though?
It's not settling. I think we can do better. Just take them. Just take C.J. Stroud.
Just take Sam Darnold. Just take Zach Wilson. Like, just listen to yourself. Just take. Like, it's no big deal. Like, it's no big deal at all to just take a quarterback that you're not crazy about. And, like, come on. Like, no red flags. I mean, come on. Like, I think that the S2 cognition score has been over-discussed relative to how little people know about it. Like, that seems to be a red flag with a lot of people.
In all these articles that we've been reading with these anonymous people in personnel, whether it's executives or scouts or whoever, there's not a single quote that I've seen about C.J. Stroud's S2 score yet where somebody says it's no big deal.
Where they discard it completely. There is one... In Feldman's article, there was one guy that said, look, there's not enough data yet to let that be, something that is your total answer to how to deal with a guy.
Right.
But it sounded like it's something that you got to consider or think about.
Yeah, it's funny. The Brandon Alley is the name of the guy who founded the S2, founded the company that administers the S2 test. And he was on the S2 cognition test, the one that Bryce Young scored through the roof on, and C.J. Stroud was last place amongst all the relevant quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it basically just measures like reaction time, ability to like process things, track things visually.
Got like 9 different categories.
It's not an intelligence test. It's kind of like a field vision test.
Right. Brandon Alley is the name of the guy who's one of the founders of the company that does that test. He was on the Pat McAfee show, and he kind of threw some cold water on the people that are pointing to some of these scores as if they're gospel.
The day that happened, that those leaks happened, my phone was blowing up from general managers and our attorney. And so we can't speak on specifics. What I will say is the list of scores that I have seen, 2 of those scores are not accurate. They're not accurate at all. And some of the reason could be for narrative purposes. The other reason is that they don't have context. So somebody could have gotten a list of very early scores. One of the athletes on that particular list, I know, had a difficult time making his way to the All-Star game. Things were delayed. He was in high demand. He was hungry, tired. It was 11 p.m., didn't want to do it. He was frustrated. We administered the test because we're asked to. We knew at that point in time, hey, we'll get you again. We'll get you at your pro day, your 30 visit. We did that, and his score is significantly higher than what is being reported in the media.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that. I'm not saying that it was C.J. Stroud.
Okay. You're not saying.
Just that for context purposes, the scores that were leaked, there are a couple of them that are inaccurate, and there needs to be context behind that.
Okay, now he didn't name names. Right. Pat McAfee tried to get him to say C.J. Stroud. Brandon Alley said no. We should point this out.
Yeah.
The 8 scores that were leaked, the 6th best score of the 8 was Anthony Richardson at 70 in the 79th percentile. So I would say 6 of the 8 are considered good scores.
Yeah.
He said 2 are inaccurate. I think it's safe to assume that at least one, if not both of the scores he's talking about, because he's almost like taking up for guys, would be either Hendon Hooker in the 46th percentile or C.J. Stroud in the 18th percentile.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going, man, this guy...
Well, as far as that specific individual he was talking about, like C.J. Stroud didn't go to an All-Star game. So that was the big thing that, like whichever particular individual he was talking about, he was not like veiling, like he wasn't specifically talking about C.J. Stroud there.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Like
he said there were 2 that were inaccurate.
I know. But I'm just saying, like, because McAfee at first thought he was like kind of wink talking about C.J. Stroud.
Right.
Like C.J. Stroud didn't go to an All-Star game, so unless they're talking about the NBA All-Star game or something.
Yeah.
Like that's not what it was. So, and Hendon Hooker didn't go to an All-Star game either. That's the part that it might have been a different
Do they
person on that list.
do they only get administered at the All-Star game, these tests?
No, but that specific person he was talking about.
Right.
So I'm just saying it's not. We don't know who any of the guys were that he was talking about.
Yeah.
You had said you thought maybe he was talking about Hendon Hooker. It wasn't. The guy you were specifically talking about wasn't Hendon Hooker or CJ Stroud.
I got you.
The remaining guy could be.
I got you. Yeah. The other of the two. Okay, you're on the same page there. We agree there were two guys he was talking about. One went to an All-Star game. Okay, gotcha. So that was Brandon Alley that administers the S2 test.
But even if it wasn't, like, if I guess the question would be if one of those two guys that he was talking about was CJ Stroud, I would think that there would have been some kind of other leak with the better score at some point. You know, like I don't know. It's I feel like there's a whole lot of damage control S2's probably trying to do right now.
Lawyers are involved,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, like this stuff's supposed to be confidential,
Right.
I'm sure, on some level. I mean, anytime it's a paid service that up to 2 teams from each division can
Bob
use.
McGinn could have got it from any of the teams.
Right,
you know?
yeah,
So
exactly.
Like it's I doubt the leak came from S2.
I think that's where the S2 guys have to feel like, okay, they want to defend their product, and yet at the same time, they're bound by whatever confidentiality rules they have, so they can't really say too much.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm if the S2 cognition score really matters to teams, and CJ Stroud was one of those two guys that actually scored a lot better, should they publicly be trying to rectify that, or is perhaps David Mulligetta, his agent, just kind of reaching out to teams that don't? Because I wouldn't worry about the teams that subscribe to the test. They all know. I would worry about like teams like the Texans that don't subscribe to that service and yet are kind of getting piecemeal information about it from other people.
Yeah, because there's no way that you can look at that and just not have an opinion on it, even if you don't subscribe to it.